Hey everybody, welcome to Power Portraits. Charge up, my name is Victor Pisano. I'd like to welcome Brad Beldon with us today. Brad is 30 years invested in Beldon, company that goes beyond just roofing and remodeling. It's a great example of how leadership, a thought process come together. So with that, we'd like to welcome Brad. Brad, thank you very much for
Thank you for having me.
part of it. You bet. With Charge Up, my goal is to try to find opportunities to inspire people to think more about leadership with a more open mind.
I have two purposes every day. One is to take the torch that my grandfather passed along to my father, that my father passed along to myself. It's my responsibility to pass that on to the next generation. And I know that every morning when I get up, and I know that every day when I drive home. The other responsibility, and I share that with our leadership team, is we have 2,500 meals a day roughly, every single day that we're responsible for. With a number of employees, 4 or 5 members per family, 3 meals a day. So everybody has to do their job for 2,500 meals to be done in a day. You know, when you start thinking about it in those numbers, and you walk in to make a cell, or you go to install a roof, or you go to install a gutter, if you don't do it right, and you lose a customer and a potential future customer, it hurts everybody.
Knowing your family for so long and knowing the Beldon name, this was a very easy choice. A great example of what Charge Up is built around. This is where leadership through legacy and a servant leadership attitude has taken place.
We try and coach our team, make the decision. Make the decision and live with it. We can fix it. If you don't make the decision and we don't control our own destiny, then the fear of failure gets really big. And so we don't get mad when people make the wrong decision. It gives us the opportunity to teach them how to make a better decision. What upsets us is when they don't make that decision and then something goes wrong.
I'm going to put you in a scenario as a leader and see how you respond. Phone rings. You just got called up to the Red Sox. They need your walk-up song, and you got to tell them. Have you figured this out yet?
No, not yet.
Come on, you're going to the Sox.
My walk-up song?
You got a walk-up song.
I guess Sweet Caroline.
Because you know everyone's going to know the words.
They're
so
all
you're
going to
be in
I
heaven.
don't have to sing.
So they'll get it in the 7th, and they're going to get it every time you come to bat.
Every time I come to bat, yeah.
Okay, I like that.
That or Texas Fight. It's going to be one of the two. I don't know. I'd have to ask my kids.
May I recommend the Aggie War Hymn?
You can certainly recommend it, but it ain't going to be played. And I'm not going to bat either. So
you're right. So we're out of that. We're out of that portion. So second question. I know your love for golf. I know that's been passed down to your kids. Pro-Am. Any choice of any golfer and any course?
Well, it would be Augusta National.
Okay.
Clearly Augusta National. And I think it would have to be Jack Nicklaus.
I like that.
He's been a leader since day one. He challenged the core. He challenged all the fans. And he's had integrity since the day he got into the game. And he still has that same integrity.
When did you know that you truly wanted to be a part of the family business, that this was your calling?
Well, since I was a little kid, like your dad worked all the time. And so on the weekends, really the only time I got to see my dad was on Saturdays, because my dad would take me to the office to get me away from my mom so I wouldn't drive her nuts. And I used to walk around the office saying, which office is mine? I used to walk around the circle here saying, which office is going to be mine? And he would just put me there with the crayons, and I'd sit there all day. And so since I was 4, I've been coming here. At 12, he finally let me cut the grass. And our grass outside is about 4 foot by maybe 50 foot. That was my job, and I cut it every day. And he wanted it to look like Wimbledon, and I wanted to get my job done as fast as I possibly could, and we were both wrong. So I would do that all summer. I would cut the grass every single day. That was my job. And then when I was 16, I started working on the cruise, and I worked in the sheet metal shop. and I spent years on roofs. And I learned the business from the bottom up, and it's the only thing I've ever wanted to do. Well, I shouldn't say it's the only thing I wanted to be a professional athlete, but it wasn't in the cards.
You didn't have your walk-up song. You didn't have your walk-up song ready when they called. So Brad, at this point, with 30 years invested, what do you see now as your purpose? What is the drive that pushes you each day in a leadership role to oversee what has now become a very, very large company?
So we have 2,500 meals a day, roughly, every single day that we're responsible for. With a number of employees, 4 or 5 members per family, 3 meals a day. So everybody has to do their job for 2,500 meals to be fed. You know, when you start thinking about it in those numbers, and you walk in to make a sell, or you go to install a roof, or you go to install a gutter, if you don't do it right, and you lose a customer and a potential future customer, it hurts everybody. We're only as good as our weakest link. Doesn't matter how good anybody is at the top, but the person that the customer meets with or has any experience with that's dropped the ball, that's what they're going to remember the most.
That's true, taking a macro approach and looking at the big picture of what occurs each and every day, where you may consider it just a sales call. It's much more important than that.
Our philosophy is from the bottom up, so we start every morning at 6 o'clock.
Yeah, so tell me about that. We talked about the other day, the 6 a.m. meeting.
Every day.
What does the 6 a.m. meeting consist of?
The 6 a.m. meeting is what happened yesterday, what are we planning to do today, and what did we learn from what happened yesterday? Every single day. And we reinvent ourselves 365 times a year.
It's funny, it reminds me of like a professional team watching game film the next morning.
It's exactly what we do. It's watching game film with notepads, because there's no video.
And you've got that leadership team in there, and it's reinforcing those things that will continue, and it's not waiting to solve a problem. It gets taken care of, it gets handled.
Well, things fall through the cracks, right? I mean, there are things when people don't want you to know, and they may fall through the cracks for a day, they may fall through the cracks for a week. At some point they'll surface, and we have systems and policies and procedures in place to fix that once we figure out that we weren't aware of the situation.
And how many years have the 6 a.m. meetings gone?
As long as I can remember. I've been here since I was 12, and we had some form of that meeting when I was 12. And it's evolved. It's gone from sitting around desks that you pull up the chairs to now conference room tables. And we work around the country. We're licensed in 43 states for roofing. So we have individuals right now in Washington, and they call in, doesn't matter what their time zone is, they call in 6 o'clock Central Time.
And see, it's amazing. And I mean, I think whether you are an existing leader and you've assumed that role and you've done it for a number of years, or if you are someone who aspires to be a leader, to have that habit of a morning meeting with your leadership team, that is not only a total commitment by the company to stand behind what it does, but more importantly, it gets buy-in from those leaders, and they understand the responsibility they have, and they also, more importantly, understand the accountability they have. And once that room grows, I'm sure it's great, because it becomes, if need be, a brainstorming session, someone to give an example of, you know, what I would call a case study where it was positive, and for others to bounce ideas off of the group. So I'm sure it can have some more positive outcomes dependent upon the day, the topics, etc.
So being in construction, every day is a case study.
True.
So what makes it work is that you can plug and play. You can't plug and play their skill sets, but you can plug and play so that if you bring in a new individual to join the team, no matter what knowledge they have or they don't have, they're brought up to speed almost instantly on how the policies and procedures work and what's expected of them and what they're accountable for. So we teach through that experience. And within a very short time frame, we know whether or not they're going to make it in our company. We sell a commodity product. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. You can't buy it on Amazon. But in essence,
One of the few things you can't buy.
Not today,
not
maybe
yet.
tomorrow. But even if you could buy it on Amazon, the end result, when we walk away from that building or that home, the end result is not the final look, because you can have two roofs that look identical, but if the components aren't installed properly, one roof's not gonna last as long as the other roof. And if you're just driving down the street, you'll never know. So we have procedures, we use iPads, we take pictures of every job every day, we write a descriptive narrative, and those come into my management team and to the owner on every job, every commercial project that we do, so that our owner knows. We tell them, hey, we made a mistake here, we're replacing this board. It's in the narrative. We want the owner to know we're not perfect, but you purchased your new roof from us knowing that we have these policies and procedures and systems in place to catch when we do something wrong, so we can fix it and you get what you pay for.
One thing that fascinates me, and just from knowing your family and knowing the process and procedures, you have a very intense training program. Tell me about the training program for the management team and what they have to go through and what they have to learn before they are empowered.
Life is about learning, and it should never stop. And so we start from the day they come in. We orient them on safety, which is the number one item that we deal with in our business. So from the minute that they come on board, we walk them through the safety. Why? We try and answer that question so that we get immediate buy-in from them. And then we try and buddy them up. It's not an official buddy system, but we try and buddy them up with somebody that understands what they do. And we also try and get them working with the opposite side of the business. So if you come in sales, we want you to come to be trained in the production side of the business. If you come in production, we want you to ride with a salesman. So that we want you to see what the other individual is complaining about.
It's a cross-train.
So that
Empathy.
when you get into your department, that you'll be better trained in the process, and we'll ultimately will provide a better product.
It's true. So it's when I think you wear blinders, you don't have empathy for what goes on outside because there are those walls, and you just like to point the finger. But when you've been there and you've done that, you have a different respect for the process, and it probably helps with finding solutions.
Oh, it absolutely helps. It's no different than what I told our daughter the other day. The one thing that you have 100% control over is integrity. And so I told the team, that's the one thing that's got to be in there. And so we went back and forth, and you have we try and build an entrepreneurial spirit. So it gets a little heated in some of our meetings to the benefit of the customer. And so what we came up with was integrity is our family business. Everybody can repeat it, and everybody knows it. And it really works because that's really what we're all about. It's what my grandfather taught me, it's what my dad taught us, and it's what we teach our kids.
And it's the perfect foundation. If you want to rely upon one word, integrity, just in and of itself, you talked about, I don't know the meaning of trust. It can have various, translation.
To different people.
Exactly. Integrity means one thing, and it's simple and it's straightforward.
But what was interesting was my grandfather didn't use the word integrity.
What did he use?
He said, always do the right thing. And I never understood what that meant. Was it right to me? Was it right to the customer? And over time it evolved in my own mind to say, it's right both ways. And it's all about integrity.
So what do you find are your leadership challenges that require the majority of your time in the role you serve?
I think people inherently make bad decisions, not intentionally, but they don't think through the process. And the end result is it may take a lot longer to fix the bad decision than doing it right the first time. We always preach to our management team and everybody actually, is it's faster in the long run to do it right than to do it 5 times before you do it right. And there are no shortcuts in life. There's no shortcuts on installing a roof. You've got to do it. The manufacturer puts out printed literature says this is how it should be installed. And if you go through 9 steps and don't get to step 10, the product's not going to last.
Okay, so we talk about challenge. Now tell me about the successes. What has been the success in your role as a leader?
I think the main success that I feel is that knowing that your business could come to an end tomorrow. No matter how good of a job you do, something could be tragic that you could lose your business tomorrow. And knowing that our team is there no matter what. They work really hard at following the policies and the procedures that we have in place to ensure that our doors will be open tomorrow. Right? We go through all those steps every single day. And the fact that 68 team members have been here over 20 years of service, some are deceased, but 68 people fought to give virtually their career to our family business is a very rewarding feeling every single day.
So for the young leader, what are the 3 most important traits of leadership?
I still think integrity is the number 1 item. I put number 2 up there as to listen, and number 3 would be to delegate. You can't grow your business if you're not willing to listen to your team, listen to your customers, and you can't grow your business if you're not willing to delegate some responsibility and live with the decisions that are made. A lot of times they're not the same decision I would make, but that's okay.
Being in the roofing industry, being in Texas, the barrage of storms, major storms and hurricanes that took place in such a condensed period of time. I'm going to assume that tested your leadership immediately because you had to almost go into a crisis mode to ensure that everybody understood their roles and responsibilities, to understand the new pressures that would be added, and more importantly, execute without trading any of your integrity, trading any of your quality and workmanship. Not many businesses have to confront that.
We operate our business in crisis mode 24/7. We expect everybody to be ready at any minute to respond to a customer's needs. So that part wasn't what was hard. What was hard was getting 50,000 phone calls in 30 days and not knowing how to handle that. So the grade on my leadership was an F-, and I accept full responsibility for that. I never anticipated the magnitude of a storm like that hitting our marketplace. And not only—
It's the most self-aware evaluation I've ever heard from a leader, ever, to give themselves an F-. D would be, ego would stop. You're good to go there.
No, it was an F-, and I mean, I tell people, I take full responsibility for that. It was the costliest hailstorm in U.S. history.
Mm-hmm.
So what I remind people of, and what I struggle with, it's like having one vending machine at the Alamo Dome for a football game, and everybody standing in line and screaming and hollering. There's only 200 drinks in the machine anyway, but guy number 69,000 is still waiting to get his drink. And you can't refill that machine fast enough, right? And it's not going to be cold. So after number 200, everybody's upset with you. And that didn't go away for a long time. And we fought that for a year. But what I wasn't willing to do, I was willing to take the hit on our reputation. I was willing to take the hit internally. I was willing to live with the stress, but I was not willing to sacrifice the end product. And conveying that to the end customer, when you have a whole street of houses that every roof has been done except Beldon's roof on that street, and they're saying, what's going on? And why can't you be here? Because the crews that we have trained and the crews that we know their work aren't ready, and they haven't finished Mrs. Jones's house yet. And we want Mrs. Jones's house to be right. And we're not leaving Mrs. Jones's house until it's finished, and then we'll come to your house. We don't play a shell game.
So what do you consider a win for you in business? And then what do you consider a win for you in life?
I think if you asked anybody here, the biggest win is, I call it a bus ticket. Everybody comes to work safely and everybody gets home safely. If we accomplish that, the rest is meaningless. Everything else works itself out. And I think if you ask anybody in this building, they'll tell you the same thing, that is my firm belief, and I will go to my grave believing that is my job. I feed mouths and we contribute in, philanthropically, but my job, short of moving the business to the next generation, is making sure that every employee that comes here every single day is safe when they get here and when they go home.
So you bring up a great point, and that is the philanthropic efforts that your family has taken on for years.
My dad gave a donation. I forget what the charity was. I'd never heard of it. And I was like, Dad, why are you, and this is in the 80s, and it was like we were struggling to make payroll. And my dad said something I'll never forget. My dad said, if not us, who will? And I've never forgotten that statement. It doesn't matter the amount, right? If enough people give $10, that's you can raise a ton of money. It doesn't have to be one person. And I've never forgotten that statement. And I use it back against my dad all the time. And I was like, how come you gave to that charity? And then he just shakes his head, okay, I know. Because it's part of our family philosophy and our business philosophy is to give back. We do Habitat for Humanity. I would imagine that we give to over 300 or 400 charities a year.
Agreed.
Maybe 500 charities.
Agreed. Your name is everywhere.
And we actually have a rolling list so that we know, and whenever anybody gives to the charity, all of us that want to know, so that it check it off, right? And so that's a core belief that we have as a family, and we bring it into the business.
I want to sincerely thank Brad Beldon for taking the time to do an interview with Charge Up on our Power Clip series. It was an incredible lesson not only on the success of Beldon, but the legacy of 3 generations based on integrity and servant leadership.
Hey everybody, Victor Pisano with Charge Up. If you like what you just saw, be sure and subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can also find more content at chargeuptoday.com. And don't forget, my friends, charge up.